Welcome to another issue of Friday Videos at Viswick. I'm Simon Gova, and today I'm going to give you some tips on how to better debug your app in Viswick. And sometimes it doesn't seem as obvious as it is, but there's different ways of creating some errors in it. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about the tap event and events on buttons. And here I have a button that's selected, and you can see that it has on tap, which is the script over here on tap, and you can tap on it and it will fire the script. So let's take a look at our console here, and if I reload the app, you can click on the welcome button and it says learn to code, and it will print out this learn to code. Oftentimes you may leave a button alone like that and then do something to it as well, and then say I add another script on it, which you can do, and now I have two scripts added on it. And then you go back over here and you click on it and you go, well, why isn't it working? I just added something. Well, this is what's called a structural change. So if you change the way that the user interface works, like if I move this down here and I come over here to the simulator, you can see that that hasn't changed, because it's a structural change. Well, the same thing applies if I add or remove a script to a button. It doesn't really know that it's changed until I hit the reload button over here, and now it's making a structural change. You can see the image is actually in a different place now. And now we have two scripts attached to this button, and boom, I'm going to cause an error actually, because there's actually an error being created by this second script. But the first error I was talking about was the fact that you may think that it's changed and it hasn't. So make sure you reload the simulator when you've when you've added another script. The second error that we're getting here, which is the one that we just had, lib error call expected number on input found 0. What this has done is it's a script that's designed to add the number 2 to another number that's coming in. But I've added it to this button. And what's happening is that the button add to is being called when I tap. And the first script didn't cause an error because it wasn't using this automatic input that's created. This input is for events, and it's an object, the event that comes in. And in fact, if we go over here and we print out the value of that object and redo this here and click one more time, now I've changed the code, which automatically gets updated inside of the simulator, but it's not a structural change to the user interface, which is the view editor. So it will actually, the simulator will take up that change and allow me to run the code in a different way now. So what's happened is it's printed out this object. This object has all of the information about the tap event that occurred on the button. And it's being pulled out here, and this is what's getting printed out. But this object's also being passed, the same object's being passed to the second add to script, and add has no concept of an object. All it wants is numbers, which is why it's saying expected a number on input 0 and found an object. So we need to, the way to debug this, or to correct it, is to go over here and essentially click on the button. You can see if I click on the wrench here, we have two of these, and I'm going to go to scripts and then remove this add over here. And now if I click on it, it's still causing this error. And remember, it is a structural change to remove a script from a button, so I have to reload. I can clear the console, and now if I click, it's just going to print out the value. Now, let's say I want to call this script and make sure that it works. And I'm going to now take this value here and call the script, and I'm going to call it add to. There we go. It has an input, and I'm going to pass in the learn to code text to the input, and then try to get it to print out the added value. And what's going to happen? Well, again, we can check this out because I changed the code. It prints out this funny looking thing here called NaN. What that means is that it's not a number. And the reason why is because I've also provided the add to with a strange value that's called learn to code, which is not a number. That's text. And it doesn't understand that. So if I create another one, put the number 4, and then click the button again, now we get the correct answer, which is 4 plus 2, and then it outputs that value, and I can print it out, and it's going to be 6. All right? So those are two kind of strange bugs that you'll find in your code if you do this. Another error you may encounter is one where you're testing the value of a field against some value that you want to check. Here I have a getValue script, and it's taking the value of the field and it's testing it against the number 1 inside of this block. If it is 1, it prints out 1. If it's not, it prints out not 1. Very simple. Let's see if this works. First, we want to add this script. So right now we have getValue. There it is on a tap. And we'll clear our console. I will reload, and I will type in the number 1. And I will click welcome. What does it say? Well, it says not 1, which is not what we thought it was going to do. If it was 1, it should print out the value 1, correct? Wrong. The match here tests against the number 1, not the text 1. And what's coming out of here is the text for 1. Therefore, we need to create a new operator called toNumber, and we connect the output of the text, which will output a number. And now, if we do this again, we now have the value 1. So that's a gotcha, because text is always coming out of these text fields, not numbers. Although they may look like numbers, they're actually not. Another problem you may have is if you disconnect the script output of one of the cases inside of a block. And if you try to click again, okay, you'll get this error saying block missing link to output. What it'll do is it will highlight it, even if it's closed. So there we go. If I reload, it will open up the block and highlight the block that's offending. Now, you have to go to the next block in order to see that happening. And there you go, or next case, I should say. Another error you may have is when you're thinking that the code is going to operate in a particular sequence. Here I have a set of 2 print statements, a first and a second one. And you think by looking at this that this would print out first and then this would print out second. Well, let's see if it does that. I'm going to drop this on here and reload, and look what happens. I get second first and first second. So that didn't work. It looks like this one at the top should print out first and this one at the bottom should print out second. There's no order to this at all. In fact, if I move this around to the side by side, it doesn't do anything. And if I move this one down here, it doesn't do anything either. So the placing of the code has no ordering. What does create an order is by putting things in blocks. So here's the same code, but with a block, allowing it to order by putting the first value to be printed first, and then putting the second inside the block and forcing it to print out second. Let's add the sequence and show you that it does work. Let's do this one more time. There you go, first and then second. Another problem that you may have is in the scripts when you have the same value appearing in more than one place using links. Here you can see that I have a label and another label, and inside of the view I have 2 labels. And I don't know which one of these labels refers to which one of these labels. In fact, this could be the same label twice showing up, or it could be one of the other ones. In order to fix this, simply go to one of the labels, click on it, go to the view properties, and change its name. Let's call this first label. Now you can see that I've changed the name, and one of these has actually changed, which is the first one. So now we know which one is which. Another problem you may have is when you're clicking on a button and you're getting an error from the script because of an event object. Now here's a script that we have, and we're going to use this as an example. Again, this button has a script on it, so I'm going to click on it, and remove the button, remove the script, add the script that I want, and now we have this one on tap. So let's see what happens when I click on this. Reload the simulator, clear the console, and now click on the button. Oof, it's produced a whole bunch of error stuff, and I don't know what it means. Block has completed with unexecuted operations. What it's doing is it's telling you that this property inside of the object that's coming in that you're trying to read, this XX, does not exist. There is no such thing as an XX property inside the object. Let's look at the object by printing it out first. I'll clear the console here and print out the object. There it is. There is an X value right here, but there's no XX value. All of these other values are possible as well. So one of them is called type. All right. So if I've now mistyped this, I actually want it to be capital X, or actually it's lowercase x. And I'm going to print this value out. And I don't have to reload the simulator. Sorry. Click. There it is. 33. It's telling me where on the button I'm clicking all along the x-axis. If I type in some other number or some other property that does not exist, I'm going to get that nasty error again. So watch out for that whenever you're using a get value from a property on an object. Another problem you may have is when you're using variables and you're trying to use them before they've been set. Here I have a script that takes the value of a variable called x and tries to print it. Let's have that executed by the script with this button. I'm going to add this here. And now reload the simulator, and now click. Well, it's going to tell me that the global variable get value x is not set. And there's a problem because it's undefined. It has no value. You cannot use variables in Viswick unless they have a value first. To do that, we use a set value. And here's what a set value looks like. I'm going to set this value to true. Now, how do I use this, set this before I use this? Because I can't click on the button to set it and then try to get the value, because I want to get the value from something else that's been computed. Well, oftentimes we simply just drag and drop the script that sets all these values in your game or your code to the view. And here, if I go to the view, you can see that it's going to set the values on load. Load is one of the special events that occur, show and hide, on a view, and it's not on a button. So whenever I load the app, it will call that script. So now if I reload Viswick and click welcome, it will now print out the value true, which was set when the app first loaded. And now the variable has been set prior to clicking on the button, and I can print out that value. Another problem may occur is when you're trying to get a particular control to work and it doesn't seem to be working because even though you've dropped a script on it, it's not happening. It's not doing anything. So here I'm going to use a value slider, and I'm going to give you an example of how this works. The value slider properties can be set through the view, and I'm going to give it a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 5, as if I was going to do some kind of a rating. It's draggable, and I can tap to set it. So if I take this on-scroll script here, which grabs the value of the slider and then sets the value of the label, which will be right here, I can then drag and drop this onto the slider, and we'll see that it's going to print out and change the value of the label. So here I go, I'll reload, and now I'm going to grab the slider and move it. Well, what's happening? Well, it's not happening actually, because it's not changing the value of the label. And the reason for that is because the event that I have on the drag is on tap. And the on scroll is supposed to be doing something not when I tap it, but when I move the scroller. So you have a whole host of other events here, and one of them is the drag event, and that's what I really want. So if I go over here and select drag, and now if I reload the simulator and I move the slider, now you can see it's changing the value. So be careful which event you're using to listen to in order to launch your scripts. You need to make the ones appropriate for the specific operator or control that you're using. And if you're ever in Viswick and you're having problems, simply go to the discussion group on questions and you can ask your questions in here. We'll definitely answer them, or somebody in the network will. There you go. Have fun playing with Viswick.